My family laughed when I said I was starting a business and told me to get a real job like my sister. Years later, they showed up asking for money. My response left them stunned. I, 29M, still remember the exact moment when my family's laughter echoed through our dining room. It was 3 years ago, during what should have been a celebratory dinner after I'd finally saved enough money to quit my soul-crushing office job. Instead of congratulations, I got ridicule. My father leaned back in his chair, wiping tears from his eyes as he told me I was being ridiculous. My mother shook her head and suggested I should get serious about my future like my sister had. Speaking of my sister, she didn't even look up from her phone as she muttered that I should stop dreaming and find a real job with benefits and stability. The business idea wasn't even that outlandish. I wanted to start a digital marketing consultancy, focusing on helping small businesses establish their online presence. I'd been freelancing on weekends for months, building a client base and learning the ropes. But to my family, anything that didn't involve a traditional 9 to 5 with a corporate badge was apparently child's play. My sister worked as a mid-level accountant at a regional firm. She made decent money, had health insurance, and followed the conventional path our parents had always praised. She was their golden child, the one who did everything right. And there I was, the family disappointment, talking about entrepreneurship like some delusional kid. The worst part wasn't even the laughter. It was the way my father looked at me afterward, like I'd personally embarrassed him. He told me that if I was serious about success, I'd follow my sister's example and stop chasing fantasies. My mother nodded along, adding that I was already 26 and needed to start acting like an adult. I left that dinner feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. But something inside me hardened that night. Their doubt became my fuel. The first year was brutal. I worked 16-hour days, taking on any client who'd hire me. I lived in a studio apartment that barely fit a bed and desk, eating ramen and peanut butter sandwiches while reinvesting every penny back into the business. My family's comments during those early months ranged from concerned trolling about my health to outright predictions of my inevitable failure. My sister would occasionally text me job listings from her company, always with some variation of "it's not too late to be smart about this." My parents would ask pointed questions about my finances during family gatherings, clearly expecting me to admit defeat and come crawling back to corporate life. But the clients kept coming. Small businesses were desperate for affordable digital marketing help, and I was hungry enough to deliver results that bigger agencies couldn't match at their price point. I learned everything I could about social media algorithms, search engine optimization, and content strategy. Every success story became a case study. Every satisfied client became a referral source. By the end of year 1, I was breaking even. By the middle of year 2, I was profitable. By the end of year 2, I was making more than my sister. The breakthrough came when one of my small business clients got acquired by a major corporation specifically because of the online presence and customer base we'd built together. The acquiring company's executives were so impressed with the digital strategy that they hired my consultancy to handle the integration and expansion of their entire e-commerce division. That contract was worth more in 6 months than my old office job paid in 2 years. I didn't tell my family about the success right away. Part of me wanted to see how long they'd keep making condescending comments about my career choice. My sister continued sending me job listings even as I was closing deals worth more than her annual salary. My parents kept asking when I'd get serious about finding a real career, even as I was building a team and looking at office space. The irony wasn't lost on me when my sister started complaining about her job during family dinners. Her company was downsizing, her department was being outsourced, and her supposedly stable career suddenly felt anything but secure. She talked about feeling trapped and worried about the future, while I sat there quietly running a growing business that was generating more revenue every quarter. I started making investments. Real estate, stocks, some cryptocurrency before it really took off. The digital marketing consultancy had grown into a full-service agency with 12 employees and clients across 3 states. I bought a house in the neighborhood where I'd grown up, just a few streets away from my parents' place, but I didn't mention it during family gatherings. The first crack in my family's facade came during my sister's birthday dinner last year. She'd just been laid off as part of another round of corporate restructuring, and the stress was showing. She looked exhausted and kept checking her phone for responses to job applications. My parents were trying to be supportive, but I could see the worry in their eyes. My father asked me how my little business thing was going, using that same tone he'd always used when discussing my career. I told him it was going well, and he nodded dismissively before changing the subject to my sister's job search. But I caught my mother staring at me with a curious expression, like she was seeing me differently for the first time. The questions started slowly. My mother began asking more specific questions about what exactly I did for work. My father made comments about entrepreneurship being more common these days, as if he hadn't laughed at the concept 3 years earlier. My sister started asking if I knew anyone who might be hiring in her field, apparently forgetting all the times she'd told me to abandon my dreams and get a real job. But I wasn't ready to let them off the hook yet. Every condescending comment, every dismissive laugh, every time they'd made me feel like an idiot for believing in myself, it all came flooding back whenever they tried to act interested in my success. The real test came 6 months ago when my father's small construction business hit a rough patch. A major client had defaulted on payments, leaving him struggling to cover payroll and equipment costs. My mother's part-time job at a local retailer wasn't enough to make up the difference, and my sister was still unemployed despite months of searching. During what started as a casual family dinner, the conversation gradually steered toward their financial troubles. My father looked older than I'd ever seen him, the stress of potentially losing the business he'd spent decades building weighing heavily on his shoulders. My mother kept apologizing for bringing up money, but they were clearly desperate. Then my sister did something that shocked me. She looked directly at me and asked if I might be able to help them out financially. Not alone, she clarified, but maybe I could invest in Dad's business or help them through this rough patch until things turned around. The audacity was breathtaking. The same people who'd ridiculed my business dreams were now asking for money from the business they'd insisted would never work. I sat there for a moment, processing what I'd just heard. My father was staring at his hands, clearly uncomfortable with the request, but desperate enough to let it happen. My mother was looking at me hopefully, as if I might be their salvation. My sister was trying to act casual, but I could see the expectation in her eyes. I asked them if they remembered what they'd said when I told them I was starting my business. The question hung in the air like smoke. My father shifted uncomfortably and muttered something about that being different, that they'd just been concerned about my stability. My mother tried to smooth things over by saying they'd always supported me, which was such a blatant rewrite of history that I almost laughed. My sister claimed she'd only been trying to look out for me, suggesting practical alternatives because she cared about my future. I told them I remembered things differently. I remembered the laughter, the dismissive comments, the job listings, the constant suggestions that I should give up and get a real job like my sister. I reminded them of every snide comment and condescending remark, every time they'd made me feel stupid for believing in myself. The silence that followed was deafening. My father finally looked up and said he was sorry if they'd hurt my feelings, but that they'd just been trying to protect me from disappointment. My mother nodded along, adding that they'd never meant to be unsupportive. But I wasn't done yet. I pulled out my phone and showed them screenshots of my business's financial statements from the previous quarter. The revenue numbers made my father's eyes widen. My mother gasped audibly. My sister's face went pale as she processed what she was seeing. I explained that my little business thing was now generating more revenue in a quarter than my father's construction company made in a good year. I told them about the investments, the real estate, the financial security I'd built while they were busy telling me to get a real job. My sister tried to backtrack, claiming she'd always known I'd be successful and that her suggestions had just been about finding a backup plan. My parents attempted to reframe their previous comments as tough love meant to motivate me. But the damage was done, and we all knew it. I told them I could afford to help them. The money they needed wouldn't even dent my savings account. But I wanted them to understand something first. Their crisis was exactly what they'd warned me about when I started my business. They'd told me entrepreneurship was too risky, that I needed the stability of traditional employment, that building something from scratch was foolish. Yet here they were, my father's traditional business failing because of circumstances beyond his control, my sister laid off despite her stable corporate job, both of them financially vulnerable in ways my diversified income streams had protected me from. The irony was perfect, and I wanted them to acknowledge it. My father finally broke down and admitted they'd been wrong about my business. He said he was proud of what I'd accomplished and sorry for not believing in me from the start. My mother apologized for dismissing my dreams and acknowledged that I'd proven them wrong about everything. My sister's apology was harder to extract, but eventually she admitted that she'd been jealous of my courage to take risks and had projected her own fears onto my situation. She said she'd been wrong to discourage me and that she respected what I'd built. Update 1. I didn't give them the money. Not right away. Instead, I told them I'd consider helping under certain conditions. First, my father's business would need to undergo a complete financial audit and restructuring plan developed by my team. If we were going to invest, it would be done properly with clear benchmarks and accountability measures. Second, my sister would need to stop looking for traditional employment and instead join my company as a client services coordinator. Her accounting background would be valuable, but she'd have to prove herself just like any other employee. No family favoritism, no special treatment. Third, my parents would need to publicly acknowledge what had happened, not to humiliate them, but because I wanted other family members and friends who'd witnessed their dismissal of my dreams to understand the complete story. The conditions sparked another round of family drama. My father was insulted by the suggestion that his business needed outside oversight. My sister resented the implication that she should abandon her career path to work for me. My parents thought my demand for public acknowledgement was vindictive and unnecessary. But their financial situation was deteriorating rapidly, and they didn't have many alternatives. After 2 weeks of family arguments and hurt feelings, they accepted my terms. The business audit revealed that my father's company had been poorly managed for years. He'd been undercharging clients, overextending on credit, and failing to maintain proper cash flow reserves. The client default that triggered their current crisis was just the final straw in a series of financial missteps. My team developed a comprehensive turnaround plan that involved renegotiating supplier terms, implementing proper project management systems, and raising prices to sustainable levels. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was exactly the kind of operational improvement that my consulting background had prepared me for. My sister struggled with the transition from traditional corporate structure to the fast-paced environment of a growing agency. She was used to clearly defined roles and predictable routines, while my company required adaptability and initiative. But her attention to detail and process-oriented mindset proved valuable for managing client relationships and project timelines. The public acknowledgement happened at my cousin's wedding reception. During the speeches, my father stood up and told the assembled family about how wrong they'd been about my business and how proud they were of my success. It was awkward and uncomfortable, but it served its purpose. People who'd witnessed the original dismissal of my dreams now understood the complete story. Relatives who'd probably thought I was just another entitled millennial learned about the years of hard work and vindication that followed. Update 2. 6 months later, my father's business was profitable again. The restructuring had been painful but necessary, and he'd learned to appreciate the value of proper financial management. More importantly, he'd gained genuine respect for the skills I'd developed as an entrepreneur. My sister had found her groove at the agency and was excelling in her role. She discovered that she actually enjoyed the variety and challenges of consulting work more than the routine of traditional accounting. Her resentment had gradually transformed into gratitude for the opportunity. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was watching my family's perception of success evolve. My parents stopped equating stability with traditional employment and began understanding that real security came from building multiple income streams and developing valuable skills. They started encouraging other family members to pursue entrepreneurial ventures instead of defaulting to corporate career paths. My sister became one of my strongest advocates, sharing her experience with friends who were considering career changes and speaking positively about entrepreneurship in ways that would have been unthinkable 3 years earlier. The money I'd invested in my father's business was performing well, but more importantly, our relationship had been rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect rather than condescension and disappointment. Looking back, I realized that my family's initial reaction wasn't entirely unreasonable. Entrepreneurship is risky, and most small businesses do fail. Their concerns came from a place of love, even if their delivery was hurtful and dismissive. But their willingness to laugh at my dreams rather than support my efforts revealed something deeper about their mindset and values. They'd been so conditioned to fear risk and value conformity that they couldn't recognize ambition and determination when it was sitting right in front of them. The revenge aspect of this story wasn't really about making them suffer or proving them wrong. It was about creating a situation where they had to confront their own biases and acknowledge the limitations of their conventional wisdom. Update 3. Today, almost 4 years after that dinner where they laughed at my business idea, my agency employs 23 people and generates over $2 million in annual revenue. My father's construction business is thriving under improved management practices. My sister has been promoted twice and is now considering starting her own consulting practice. But more importantly, my family has learned to celebrate ambition rather than discourage it. When my teenage cousin announced his plans to start a YouTube channel instead of focusing solely on college prep, my parents were the first to offer support and encouragement. When my uncle mentioned wanting to turn his woodworking hobby into a side business, my father shared lessons from his own restructuring experience and connected him with potential customers. The transformation has extended beyond just attitudes toward business and career choices. My family has become more supportive of risk-taking and unconventional paths in general, whether that's my cousin's decision to study abroad, my aunt's return to school at 50, or my brother's choice to become a freelance photographer. The money was never really the point. It was about respect, acknowledgement, and the right to pursue my own definition of success without ridicule or dismissal. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if they'd been supportive from the beginning. Would I have worked as hard? Would I have been as motivated to prove them wrong? Would the success have felt as sweet without the initial rejection? I'll never know the answers to those questions, But I do know that their laughter on that night 3 years ago changed everything. It turned doubt into determination, dismissal into drive, and ridicule into the fuel that powered everything that followed. The best revenge, as they say, is living well. But sometimes living well means making sure the people who doubted you get a front row seat to watch you succeed.